28 seconds.
27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds.
19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12.
11.
10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
What?
Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, welcome to Subspace Chatter, the show where we boldly go into discussing Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Today, we'll be discussing the 7th episode of the new series called The Serene Squall. Let's go around and do introductions. Hello, my name is Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
Hi, I'm Brad, and I host no channels anywhere.
Hi, I'm Scott, and I host the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
Hi, I'm Dan. What do I do? Things to do with Star Trek, I guess.
All right. So first question, everybody. Would you like to see Cybok return?
It's an interesting character choice given what we know about Cybok's abilities and the nature of his character arc from the earlier movie properties. He struck me as manipulative and altering people's perceptions of things. And given I was just thinking about this morning, given that the story seemed to touch on identity and seemed to be, and I'm not sure, but was the pirate captain in the episode, were they referred to as they during the episode?
Yes. So
the implication would be that they were somehow not a binary kind of gendered character, correct? So given that relationship, it's kind of a dangerous path to walk with this character who's non-binary or somehow, not a binary gender, having a relationship with this character who can be manipulative emotionally. And it's, if you want some certainty around, it's okay to express yourself with, in your own identity, to express who you truly are at the heart. Yet that person who's uttering those words is connected to a character that is manipulative and can alter people's perceptions of what is, okay. It just may be a little difficult, maybe a little bit precarious. So would I like him to stay in the character? Sure, why not? But it opens a couple of doors that may not be, where you want to go with the story. That's all.
But I think I was thinking to myself recently as well, like, it seems like you would need to have the character return, I think, because there's no connective tissue directly between, like, when you see him at the end of this episode and, like, the start of the film where he's just, like, walking, with his horse. The laughing Vulcan as the music cue says.
Yeah. So, we've all seen Final Frontier, the Star Trek movie that really is so bad it's good. I mean, people say it's like a really bad movie. It is, but it's just so much fun to watch. And, Cybox is a central character. He's so good at playing this bad Vulcan. And I have no doubt that, if he comes back in the series, he's going to probably have more gravitas, not immediately be, the laughing Vulcan. Yeah. The top, like, a big thing with this episode was mutiny. I would not be surprised at all if he managed to get together a small army in, the rehab center and probably take it over and escape. And I am actually looking forward to it just to see what gets him to, where was it? Nimbus 3.
I think that Cybok is like the reintroduction of characters through this show has been, you know, sometimes like when things come back, you're worried like, oh, is this just going to be empty fan service? Is it just going to like, you know, pay lip service to the fandom and just, you know, get people geeked out and make them click and make them want to watch. But with this, I really think it actually is in service of the story for Cybok to come back, because there has been a through line of Spock wrestling with his Vulcanness throughout by, you know, choosing a mate who, you know, calls him out for not being Vulcan enough. And we have like himself beating himself up about how Vulcan he is or isn't. And Cybok is somebody who just completely doesn't even worry about that. Granted, he's a cult leader, and that's crazy, but like he gives Spock a sort of example of what other choices can be made. Um, and I think it's sort of like a mirror image of him. And this episode actually makes him even more of a mirror image. So I think it's really interesting. However, I do agree the villainous stuff and the how the gender roles play into that. You know, to sort of introduce a character where they're non-binary and a villain who lies about who they are, and having them connected with Cybok and having this person question Spock's identity. I think, yeah, that could lead down some problematic roads. Second question, since humans generally value emotions, do you view the Vulcans' focus on rehabilitation for members of their species who value emotion as wrong?
I think the criminalization of it and the treatment of people who want to embrace that historically accurate for, you know, for canon, right? These are people who are deeply emotional, or at least have been in the past. They've just tamed their most aggressive tendencies through the use of logic and reasoning. I think it's I think it's it's a tough question to answer, because it's a cultural question. It's wrong for me to question anyone else's cultural attitudes, and what works for their culture, right? So if it was a real life, real time kind of culture in the world, that would be tough, unless it was harmful, like physically threatening injury or death to the individuals in question. And I don't think that's what's going on here. I think it's just like we put criminals in prison and give them sentences that remove them from society. And sometimes it's not necessarily for the criminals' interest in rehabilitation, but rather to isolate them so they don't harm, like a virus, they don't harm society as a whole. I think that's what they may be doing, or that might be the arc of that reasoning for Vulcans. But you know, I don't know.
Is that what it is though? Because I didn't pick up on this, but is that the crime that they've committed that they're being rehabilitated for? That they rejected logic, or is it the fact that they rejected logic and then like went out and committed actual crimes?
The way that Vulcans frame criminal behavior is a rejection of logic. So to go into rehab is to re-embrace logic as your core value. I actually think that rehabilitation is, you know, in terms of somebody having difficulties, is about the kindest thing one can do. The goal being purging of emotion, though, I think is a bit misguided. I think Vulcans in general, and I think Angel also pointed this out as well, Vulcans are very emotional people. They just express it very differently. And like Brad said, I think it's just trying to rein in tendencies that hurt other people versus just purging of emotion in general, like Kolinar.
Right.
Well, I thought it was interesting that T'Pring makes the distinction. She says that it's not a prison; it's a rehab center, rehabilitation center, and also, like, I agree with what you've been saying about avoidance of like harming other people, because like I was thinking about like Surak brought the emphasis on logic and what is the alternative? Well, the alternative for them is like turning out to be like the Romulan civilization, basically, and also how Cybok. It's said that Cybok didn't go through his Kolinar where he was meant to, or something like that.
I think the Vulcan character that we met in two episodes ago, that T'Pring was hunting down or negotiating with, right?
Charlie?
They did reference, it wasn't just the kind of embracing of the emotion or the rejection of logic, or whatever they framed it as, but I think Spock was the one who introduced that detail about how he was responsible for some kind of riot or uprising on some colony or some place, and maybe it's a matter of rejecting logic, which leads to the consequence of crime. So they're rehabbing rather than punishing, so that they don't have a repetition. Maybe that's the flaw they're trying to solve, so that society doesn't get harmed further.
Right. They're looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
When someone does something wrong, they're like, how did we fail? How did we fail this person?
It's
Let's
kind of
try
Scandinavian.
to that.
Yeah.
It's kind of Scandinavian in that regard, or
Exactly.
or restorative justice.
Exactly.
Some First Nations peoples.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, okay. So the actor, I believe, goes by she, her pronouns. So or they, them. So just for purposes of this question, it's framed as she. So how well do you think Jesse James Keitel played her role, and was it predictable that they would turn out to be a villainous character?
Honestly,
I think
so.
So go ahead, Scott.
I'll be honest. I don't know. I could just be a rube or whatever, but I did not see it coming. The worst thing that I thought was when Spock showed up at their quarters and they were like dancing out to club music, which was cool and all. And then they were headed wherever, and they're just she's talking to him about. Was that the point when she was talking to him about being like both human and Vulcan, or is that a different scene? Like trying to be both. I can't remember, but is it in that same scene when like she's asking him to help her with her necklace, which can be like a really intimate thing? I was just like, okay, do we have someone else who's in love with Spock now? Because we've got T'Pring and Chapel, and now we've got Dr. Aspen. But then she flips, and I absolutely did not see it coming at all.
It was a different scene to that discussion that you're talking about to do with the necklaces and the turbolift, but the discussion like where they talk about like Spock's identity basically is in Spock's quarters.
Yeah, and it almost entirely came out of left field for me that she'd been manipulating him the whole time.
I was suspicious. Okay. I was suspicious of it. I mean, she's so first off, the actress did a great job in the episode. She was fantastic, and I have a point I want to make later about the inclusivity of the series and the inclusivity in relation to this episode. But as soon as they were attacked on the bridge, and she, who is supposed to be a trained Starfleet officer, guidance or a counselor notwithstanding, but it's she did nothing. She cowered in the corner. She stayed out of the way until Spock was in danger, and then she jumped into right? And to me, it was a lot of different things about the episode kind of left me, concerned. But that moment to me was the first flag of what the hell's going on here? Why didn't she jump into and start defending? Right? Now, these are people these are pirates who she's had interactions with before, and there's backstory there about why she doesn't like them, and yet she just sits there and goes, "Oh my god, what's going on?"
Right.
No, it doesn't work.
So, like, as a queer person watching television, when you see somebody who is very queer coded and sort of seductive and lithe, it is a very it on one hand there's a bit of disappointment that they turn out to be a villain, and it's a bit of a trope. Even characters that aren't explicitly queer, such as Jafar or something, where it's like they have this way about themselves. On the other hand, it's like, why can't queer people be like comic book silly villains too? That equity should stretch in that direction as well.
Absolutely.
So it's like phobic and affirming at the same time. And I think trans representation is possibly going to straddle those two worlds whenever they're on screen, possibly.
Well, because sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Sorry. I thought, because I'm like aware of that trope, like I thought it was really predictable, and I guess like the first scene she was in, or maybe the second, and I was like, I really hope they don't go down that road, because it's such a common one, such a cringy one. I was like disappointed that it did. But also, like, after watching that episode, I did find it interesting to find out not only is the actress or actor who played the character trans, but so is the director.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would not have. I was surprised when that discussion point came up in our chats. Right, I would not have. It would not have phased me. It would not.
Right.
It didn't even register with me. I just thought it was an actress doing their job and playing the part fairly well.
Right. It was easy to sort of put it out of your mind. It's just that, like, the narrative with trans folks is typically that they're lying about who they are.
True.
And that's the only thing where I'm like, did they have to go there?
No,
but,
I get what you're saying. But the reality is that if a marginalized community feels they want acceptance, they need to be accepting of representation that spans the gamut in narratives, right? Because they can't always be the heroes.
Well, no,
because heterosexual people are also portrayed both as heroes and villains. So in order for the greater society, right, everyone who's participating in that greater society needs to have presentation that runs the gamut, so that they can finally be saying, yeah, like, we've been accepted. There are going to be good people and there are going to be bad people. It doesn't matter what orientation they have, or
right. It's not that, oh, she's or they're a villain, that's terrible. It's just the specific type of villain.
Okay.
Anyway, so how do we feel about?
It didn't bother me at all. It didn't bother me at all.
Right.
Finding out that they were trans, because the bottom line is, it doesn't affect the narrative. This is just a person who did a good job, and the story was done fairly well. And as a viewer, I don't really care.
Extremely entertaining. I absolutely agree with that. How do we feel about Strange New Worlds not continuing the TOS tradition of red shirts being injured or killed in away missions? I don't really care. I'm fine with it. Maybe they might do one or two just to, do that. But I'm fine with it. I
had a discussion about red shirts quite recently on another podcast called Speaking Nerdy Podcast, where I was chatting with a person in the comment section, and we were saying, like, maybe like the red shirts from TOS seem to be like the opposite of stormtroopers from Star Wars, and because like red shirts always seem to die, whereas like stormtroopers always seem to miss.
Mhm.
But I was thinking like Strange New Worlds is showing that red shirts can survive. Maybe it's time for Star Wars to show that stormtroopers can like be really good shots.
Oh, maybe. Do you guys think? I was just thinking about this actually. Do you think that maybe Strange New Worlds is specifically steering away from that trope? Because I just remembered how we were talking about back in when we were reviewing Memento Mori, how like
Mhm.
nobody had died up to that point, and then in that episode they lost like 7 officers, but
Mhm.
except for the one that helped Kyle get to safety, and he was wearing blue, we didn't know what any of them, like which department any of them were in or what they were wearing.
Mhm.
So it does kind of seem like they're steering away from, oh, the red, yeah, watch out for the guys in red, they're always going to die.
Right. I think it's also like a marker of making a character kind of disposable, and I'm not into that. I want to get to know these people and actually care if they pass away or get injured or something.
I think it's also interesting historically because like when the series is set is like after the cage and before where No Man's Gone before, sort of like the pre-Kurtzman era. And like none of those episodes had red shirts in them. It was just the gold and blue uniforms.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right. Moving on. Why doesn't anyone on the ship validate the identity of Dr. Aspen? How are they, the pirate captain of a pirate ship, able to convince leadership of a Federation flagship that they were someone they are not? Or is there a crucial detail missing? I think like the 5, there's just some things that are just goofy and you go with it. It's not there's a lot of things that are really convenient that happen in this episode, and you know, things that you just don't think too hard about, and I think that's one of them personally. What do you guys think?
It was a long-winded question. I was trying to understand it.
Oh, why doesn't anybody identify Dr. Aspen? Like background checks. I don't.
Ah, right.
I would just think because it's a humanitarian thing, because they're, you know, on a humanitarian mission, and like they're probably much more interested in saving people than really digging into their background and making sure, because the risk you take on, you know, being in Starfleet is possibly hurting yourself, and what better way of, you know, going down in flames than helping people, being with good intentions.
Yeah.
I thought it's interesting when Scott mentioned earlier about like the club music that she plays in the
Mhm.
quarters. I thought it's interesting in the episode that she talks about like this thing called club hopping.
Mhm.
And she says like she did that at Starfleet Academy. She tells Spock that.
But they're lying, so that never
Yeah.
happened. So where well, like that recontextualizes that statement. So like they presumably didn't go to Starfleet Academy, right? That was a lie.
That's the missing detail that I don't remember catching in the episode.
Right.
So it's possible that she is Dr. Asper, that
Mhm.
she was serving, that she did drop out to do something in this
Okay.
undefined territory or unaligned territory that just happens to have coincided with her interaction with Cybok. I mean, I
Right.
get that, but then that leads back to my first statement, which is
Mhm.
if suddenly after her interaction with Cybok, this Starfleet officer gives
Mhm.
up her career, right? So it just makes it kind of weird. So if she's actually Dr. Esper and she's actually right that
Mhm.
character, okay, I get it. But they didn't really strengthen that position at any point, other than these little bits about, you know, oh yeah, I went to Starfleet Academy. Well, I say the same shit, and you know,
Right.
got to confirm it. Like,
Yeah, I'm really excited to, I mean, they have that party on lower decks on that one ship where they have like the senior officers or whatever But I wonder on Starfleet Academy if it's like a college town. And I mean, they are in San Francisco, so going to drag shows, hitting the town would not be difficult, I would imagine.
I gotta be honest, it kind of just seemed like she was just playing a really long game because honestly, she could have been lying, but I swear there was this line she said that she had left the real Dr. Aspen on some asteroid somewhere. Like maybe she just got as much information out of the real doctor as she could, like just enough to have a backstory of kind set up. And then she's playing like a seriously long game, obviously, to get Sybok out of rehab.
Mm-hmm. So this question is related to the scenes after the kiss between Spock and Chapel. Was anybody else bothered by the arrogance displayed in the episode by both Pike after capture and T'Pring when explaining how she realized that Spock was not actually interested in Chapel? Like, some people were real confident about the statements they were making. I agree. I think Spock and Chapel and T'Pring are lying liars who lie. They are lying, all of them. T'Pring's like, "Oh, you're not into Chapel." She knows she's lying. Spock says, "Oh, I'm not into Chapel." That's a lie. Chapel says, "I'm not into you." That's a lie. Spock says, "I'm not into you either." That's a lie. I don't think it's arrogance. It's more like, we're just going to keep going with this lie, right? Yeah, we're just going to tacitly agree that we're just not going down this road. We're just going to construct a lie to keep doing that.
It's quite dismissive of T'Pring to say, right? Well, I realized there was absolutely no way that could have been true because, come on.
Right.
You're Vulcan.
Right. Yes.
She's human. I mean, ew.
Yeah, right.
There was that kind of superiority, kind of ickiness about that comment.
And at the same time, she, in the beginning of the episode, she's like researching human sexuality and like saying, "Hey, let's do human stuff." So there's like this fetishization on her part of his background and his mixed. Yeah, it's like disgusted but intrigued at the same time.
I think I always thought that was part of like why she has Spock and Kirk battle each other in amongst time. She's interested in humans. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, good connection.
Yeah. Wow.
And Pike, I think that they were captured and how they got out of that. There was an arrogance to Pike, believing that he could dupe the dupes. He could, without much effort, he could just play them like they were idiots, and they could quickly get out of this. Like, oh yes, let's use this gambit we've used before, and and the smirks that he had sometimes were just seemed like out of character to me.
He seemed real sure of himself about how they're going to get out of here. Alpha Braga, here we go. Like,
right.
But they're on a ship and they're captured, and Una got shot in the shoulder again.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's the running gag.
Right.
It's like where's
Leon?
Does she have like magnets of phaser magnets on her shoulders? I don't understand.
I wondered if that reference to Alpha Braga 4 was perhaps an in-joke reference to Brana Braga. Was Braga included in the...
Oh yeah,
that's a good connection.
Damn.
Wow, Dan, you are on top of it. Yes, I love that.
So little Easter egg, but still doesn't diminish from the fact that they were arrogant in their assumption that they could easily defeat these idiotic.
Right.
And this is, remember, Spock said at one point in the episode, "We'll be out of range of civilization."
Yep.
So it implies that these people are living outside of civilization. They're somehow, the what would have been like the hillbillies of the 1950s, 1940s, right? That whole attitude about anyone who lives in Appalachia somehow isn't quite all up to speed. So that same, by extension, those people who are living outside are just not up to speed, and whatever. We can beat them with just a couple of little smoke and mirror things.
Also, I enjoyed watching the after show of the Red Room that Will Wheaton presents. I very rarely watch that after show, but I watched the one about this particular episode of Serene Squall, and like it highlighted like through Trek there's been so many examples and instances of like pirates basically like in TNG's Gambit, and
Like pack
it-
leads.
they didn't appear, but it was saying like
Almost
Harry
pirates
Mudd
with
is a
Nazi.
bit like a pirate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But I mean, by extension, I'm with you, Brian. I didn't entirely like the implication that anything that's like non-Federation is outside civilization, because you're at a point in canon where a lot of the races that they have yet to encounter, Klingon,
Outside.
Cardassian, Romulan, Bajoran, Ferengi are all outside the Federation, and we know that they have civilizations.
yeah,
It's just not
that's like
their
that,
version of civilized.
like
Well, we
the
know,
premiere
but-
of like the premiere of Deep Space Nine, where Bashir says I've always wanted to do frontier medicine.
Yeah.
And Kira says your frontier is my home.
Mhm.
And I think that was like a way to go, wham, we're calling that out right now. Like, yeah.
But also, like you mentioned, Scott, like the Ferengi, like Starfleet and the Federation really don't know much about the Ferengi at this stage because like they're only like in the Enterprise episode acquisition before now, and like they start to make contact in like season 1 of TNG, but like I don't think that they would. I think they're that's just one of the species you mentioned, but I think there's a lot of unknowns for the Federation at this point in time.
Yeah. Why? How is it that the bridge crew are such bad shots with their phasers? Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I was just saying about stormtroopers. They can't shoot. And apparently, neither can the bridge crew.
It was so
It's like
funny.
there's
How they
if
all
you
missed.
rewatch some of that episode, right, or some of that sequence, they're shaking their guns, right? I mean, as they're firing, it's like poo, pew, 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 and it's like, do you not understand from a choreographical standpoint, right? Aim and shoot, not pew, 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 pew.
Right.
Right?
It was ridiculous.
But maybe they're trying to also focus on not getting shot themselves.
Right. They're just trying to spray and, keep it's more defensive than offensive. I think like it would be more believable on TNG for someone to be a bad shot because wartime isn't really a thing at that point. So they might be out of practice, except for maybe Worf, of course. But like on TOS in that era, you're still at war with the Klingons and you're running into hostile aliens a lot more frequently. So I would think
Oh yeah.
I think there's one exception, at least one exception in TNG, which is yesterday's Enterprise.
True.
Yeah. But also in
Rework.
TNG, don't they have like those much smaller phasers that you just like pinch to fire instead of something that looks like an actual gun?
Right.
Well, but both eras have Type 1 phasers.
Right.
Well,
Why-
I thought that was just a weird
No, you're right.
moment.
That totally. I was like, that took me out of it. Like, what are they doing?
And it really made me wonder how come a crew of like 30 people
Mhm.
can take over a flagship of the Enterprise.
I
I don't think maybe they're gonna make Leon do some extra little duty and preparedness that just
scrub the
didn't ring
toilet with
right.
a toothbrush, something like that.
Yeah,
Everyone's going to get real acquainted with her rules.
Right. Why is it that Nurse Chapel was the only crew aside from Spock who seemed capable of subduing the intruders?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just I just thought, okay, this is just one of those silly, wacky episode, and we're just gonna have to go with it. That Chapel's the saving the day. And I'm actually, Nurse Chapel usually doesn't have stuff to do like this. So I was really excited that she did that, but I totally get it. Why is it up to Nurse Chapel to save people?
Well,
And then- in that sequence, right, she gets the one guy,
Mhm.
and the other guy's behind going, oh my goodness, I should have my gun ready. Oh, my gun's jammed. Oh my gosh. It was
During that sequence, it crossed my mind that the Hippocratic Oath might be relevant.
True.
But then I realized, well, what she's actually doing is dosing them out with the hypospray. So it's not actually like
It's
killing
not
them
really-
or anything like that.
yeah, she's not jamming them in the eye socket with it or anything like that.
or it could be one of those Genesis things where they're going to turn into like a spider. Who knows?
Oh yeah. It was really funny when Spock and Angel showed up in engineering, and she like stands up and points the hypo spray at them like a gun. But that, oh my gosh, I know I've said this. I've actually been saying this for a couple episodes, and I'm bringing it up now because I got a wider audience for it. Where was Hemmer? I mean, not just the fact that there was a scene in main engineering and the chief engineer wasn't there. It's just, I couldn't help but thinking, like, if Scotty had been the engineer on the Enterprise and it started getting taken over, every shot of him from then on would have been him crawling through the Jeffries tubes, like a combination of John McClane and MacGyver. Because if he's locked out of the systems, he's going to be finding other, engineering solutions to taking out the bad guys. He'd probably have had the ship back under control by the time Pike turned around and attacked it.
Yeah, and like Uhura could have helped with communications, like getting that to work.
Communicating with who?
Starfleet.
Might have taken a while, but oh crap, they were kind of out of range though,
Yeah.
weren't they, with the subspace
Mhm.
buoys.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did the pirates obtain Tholian tech?
It crossed my mind about that like just now, and how in the episode's teaser before the credit sequence, like you see the Enterprise enter the asteroid field, but no mentions made of the asteroid field. And then after the credit sequence, they say like there's a nearby. It's in the dialogue that there's a nearby asteroid field, but you see like they're already in the asteroid field, so the visual effects really don't match up with the dialogue.
Right. Do you think Ston heard about Spock's incident with Chapel? Do you think he might have heard about it? I got the impression also that Ston is like Strange New Worlds version of Belial. Like he just looks like a boring guy,
So, can we go back to the Tholian question? I'm interested.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm interested in finding out if people think like that's like the Tholians are active in that area, or if that's just like tech that's been used by the pirates.
Entirely possible.
I thought it was kind of like a Pac-Led thing. They might have just like hijacked it and maybe fought with them at one point and invaded them as well and took their stuff.
Okay.
Anybody else? I don't know why this didn't hit me till now, but consider there was kind of a huge metaphor, just kind of staring us at the face with the Tholian web. Because Spock realized that if you take out one particular asteroid, then the web will fall. But then it turns out that there are two are equally similar, and he has to make his best guess as to which one to choose.
Right.
And he's been spending this entire episode and a lot of this whole series trying to decide, which side of his identity he wants to embrace, human or Vulcan, which, let's face it, are equally good. I don't know why that took me till now to realize.
And the central question of that is guided, that Spock is guided to over and over and over again by Dr. Asper, right? Asper or Aspen?
Aspen.
Dr. Aspen is the same question, the same type of questions that Sybok asks in the movie of the people he interacts with. It's a way of easing their burden, right? He absorbs, takes it in. So this is the same kind of manipulation, the same kind of thing that's going on.
Right.
So it's a hint about the kind of technique that's being used. And it's many layers to it, because this is the question that Spock really should be asking. He really should be dealing with this because he's got a duality within himself, right? And he's trying to figure out how each piece fits. The same as all of us. the
Yeah.
same as identity and how you're going to be in the world, and who you are, and what you're going to present. It's all kinds of equally meaningful layers are sandwiched into each one of these interactions. But for me, it was Aspen's presence that made it a little bit more nefarious, a little bit more villainous, if you will.
Mhm.
Gave you a hint again, because suddenly she's everywhere with Spock, and it's like, how the hell did that happen, and why?
The thing that, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
I was thinking about like the asteroid field and stuff, and the thing that always puzzles me is how you see like the ship that Captain Angel ultimately takes off in, and like it's like following the Enterprise through the asteroid field, and that the Enterprise doesn't detect it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There are just many things that just seem to be weird.
Yeah, like T'Pring just sort of being in this area, like was real. Like she just managed to get there in the next scene. Like
Or the
space, I
sensors.
guess.
Yeah,
You can
sensors
kind of,
weren't working. They couldn't detect anything. It seemed weird.
Mhm.
And the Tholian tech itself, Tholians, we've learned from Enterprise the conditions on Tholian ships, right? They
Mhm.
wouldn't have been able to go to a Tholian ship
Mhm.
and take it over.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
They would have had to destroy it
Mm.
from the outside. And Tholians are quite powerful, even against Constitution class ships. So how would a pirate ship cobbled together from this and that, be able
Yeah.
to accomplish that?
That's
And
a
if it
good point.
if it was just like they stumbled on Tholian tech in this area, how did they learn to operate it? And if they stumbled into the web themselves, how did they overcome it? Right? It's just many questions
Yeah.
relating to that particular element.
And it's not like even like the web is necessarily established as specifically Tholian.
Mhm.
Well, from a visual perspective,
Yeah.
from all of our understandings of past series and experiences that different crews have encountered,
Mhm.
I'm jumping the gun and calling it Tholian, but it sure as hell looked like a Tholian web to me.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
also
it does
think
look-
like it could function if we're going with the pirate analogy that this whole thing is into. You want to scare the people that you're trying to capture, and one way to do it is to pretend that you're someone much more powerful than yourself. So I think it would make sense to give the impression that that Tholians are after them.
Right.
Well, they scanned once the web came online. They
Mhm.
scanned it and they ascertained very quickly. Well, if we
Mhm.
cross the line, something's going to happen, and we're going to get
Right.
screwed. And if we
Mhm.
don't, if we try to
Kaboom.
find this, we're going to get screwed. And their own sensors were able to determine that, so they set it up as being quite dangerous, which, in my way of thinking, meant Tholian.
All right. So about the Vulcan Boreal, Stan, did he hear? Do you guys think he heard about the incident with Chapel where they kissed? Do you think he heard about it? You think that this what I'm basically trying to get at is, do you think this is the first tree to or domino to fall, or one of them, for a muck time to happen? Because
Oh.
like for him to see that there's trouble in paradise might embolden him to pursue T'Pring. That's my thinking.
With Stawn.
Mm-hmm.
The Vulcan on the on
Yeah.
Yeah,
on
because
Vulcan.
he's in this. He's
Yeah.
he doesn't say anything.
Yeah, he does. He tells T'Pring that there's an incoming message from
Oh yeah,
Enterprise.
that. Yes.
Oh, that guy.
Mhm.
That guy.
It's not
Yeah,
very
I mean-
memorable.
Yeah, we know in Amok Time that like T'Pring's doing all this because Ston will be there afterwards. But I did always kind of get the impression that was like her idea, and he might have just been the one that was just going along with it. Although that might have just been the way it was written.
So he's passive.
He also accompanies T'Pring in the episode's ending when they go and see Cybok.
Well, that's right, he does.
I wondered about that. I thought maybe T'Pring and Stawn are actually not rehabilitating these people. Maybe they're in cahoots with each other secretly.
Maybe T'Pring has fallen victim,
Maybe,
which would explain why she's so ready to embrace Spock and his uniqueness, even though she seems very ultra Vulcan and ultra nationalistic, if you can apply that term, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
might be a good
Vulcans
cover.
Vulcans are pretty xenophobic and very to themselves and insular and believe and superior and believe that their way is the way. So yeah,
she represents that for sure.
Mhm.
So it does seem like a contradiction, doesn't it? But we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Okay. I can see that laying a little bit of groundwork for later.
What kind of ship still is operated by a captain's wheel? I just thought that scene where Pike is turning the wheel is just so weird. Like, why would they have that? I guess they kind of had that in that sail ship that Avery Brooks, or not Avery Brooks, but
Cisco.
Captain Cisco and her son are in.
Yeah, but that was
Bajoran.
a solar sail ship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
But also, like, I thought of well, you see in like even between like Enterprise in the 2150s and in the 24th century, like Insurrection, where ships have like the sort of joystick
Right.
Yep.
version.
Yeah, but that was more like a shameful thing. It was hidden, only used in last resort kind of thing, or for someone who's very phallic, like Riker.
I seem to recall like Travis Mayweather using it on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Mayweather was a phallus anyway. But my thought is that it was another way of proving how much of a uncultured, uncivilized, unadvanced, kind of primitive people these pirates were, right? And just another way of saying, look at these idiots. They're still using, a turning wheel for a spaceship.
Fun, personally. But yeah, it does kind of give an impression of like backwoods folks who are, yokels in space. And
although again, it's another callback to Star Trek V: The Final Frontier.
Yeah, and
how so?
You see the wheel in that room where Cybok talks with Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, shows McCoy the vision of McCoy's dad. There's a wheel that says where no man's gone before or whatever in that room.
That's right.
Yeah.
The replica of a pirate ship wheel.
Also, like the Enterprise intro where you see like the ship. Little more vague, but what master chef recipe did Pike whip up to keep his captors fed, do you think? Like, what was it that he was spooning into their bowl? Because it
Something
looked
that would
like
poison them halfway through.
Yeah, well, he clearly wasn't making his ribs, so.
Right. It looked like some kind of goulash or stew.
You put a little protein, you add a little fibrous vegetable, added some kind of broth, and flavor it with a nice herb or two, and then pepper it up with something spicy. You got yourself a nice dish.
Yeah.
My wife's making beef stew downstairs right now, actually.
I'm just worried about what protein he found.
I know, like,
right?
What's going to be on a captive ship where they keep captives? Like, is it just other captives?
Whatever it is, there's a good chance they're not keeping it fresh. I don't see anything resembling refrigeration.
Right.
Right. Roadkill. Space roadkill.
Stick it out the window. Just stick it out the window. Just
once
like
again, about how backward they are.
Right. Like how like in colder areas, maybe Brad, you relate to this, but like beer, you stick it outside. Maybe they just put their meat outside.
Well, in the Arctic, that's what they would do. In the winter, they put anything they catch fish,
Mhm.
and they'd be frozen by the time they get back to the house, and they didn't put it inside the house. They just stuck it nose down in the snowbank.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with seal, just stuck it down nose first in the snowbank.
Yeah.
So they mentioned Kavak Colony from Enterprise, the Affliction Divergence. It's the same place where Phlox is taken in that two-parter. And I remember like there being at least one Targ in that colony, so maybe Targ might be involved in the meal.
Oh no.
It's nearby.
Well, apparently they do deal with Klingons, so maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know Dan is gonna hate this question. What is it with Vulcan obsession with monogamy? Like, I'm not even saying that they have to be in a triad or something. I'm not trying to make a throuple happen. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that they seem that whole line of dishonesty at following the kiss. No feelings. We're fine. We're just going to lie about it. And it's just going to be fine that way. Why not at least be honest and say, I have feelings? But they can't even do that. They can't even have that conversation.
And maybe for viewers, we should clarify that it was you who asked the question.
Preceding the T'Pring kiss with Spock at the end of the episode was her saying, "There's no way you could have had that much passion for a human," or something to those effects.
Right.
I know she used the word passion. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it again says something about how the kiss was with Chapel, and maybe a little bit about his connection with her. But it also was used to contrast, right, what was before with Nurse Chapel, and then how he and T'Pring kissed just after she made that statement, which was it was fine, but it was pedestrian, and it was, not really preceding passion. It wasn't really getting there.
Right.
Well,
so
you say passion, but then like I wondered how much for that it's for show.
But that's my point, right?
Yeah.
She says you could never have kissed, meaning either he as a Vulcan could never have had that much passion for a physical expression of affection, or it's pointing out that he doesn't have passion like that for T'Pring. Right. Or
that passion is hers and hers alone. That to me, that passion is mine. It's meant to be directed to me,
and certainly not to a human.
Yes, right. Which again reinforces this notion of how she feels about her culture and her culture alone.
I think like her connection with Spock, on top, like in addition to being, type a bit fetishy, I think she yearns for a solid emotional connection with somebody, but she's going about it the way that they discuss things with each other. It's like she has to put this Vulcan front, like every Vulcan, but at the same time, she's yearning for Spock to really engage with her and connect with her.
It's a lot of people have the same kinds of things, right? And in the real world, people confuse lust with love. They confuse love with security, right? Feeling of safety with somebody. And that's one of the reasons why divorce rates are so high, because they don't truly understand what it means to be bonded and connected long term. And after a couple of years, they get, frustrated, and they start thinking, well, maybe I'm just ready to try something different. Well, you should have thought about that before you got married, dumbass.
Right.
But this is what they did, right? And there's lots of other things I know, but maybe this is speaking to some of that confusion about what the justification for a bonding like that. We've made it very clear that they've made it very clear that it's because Spock and T'Pring were connected from childhood.
Right.
And
like, why not date a little? Get on some Tinder, go date a little bit. get so
I
So
think-
get some experience and figure things
Right.
out, right?
Mhm.
I think the Vulcans view it so much through what is culturally accepted, because so that's why I was saying, like, they are already, as we know from Enterprise, they're already like, well, familiar with the Denobulans who have
Right.
like polyamorous relationships,
Mhm.
but they don't judge the Denobulans and say, oh no, you shouldn't be doing that. They
Right.
just accept it as a different culture.
Yeah, Trip was a little weirded out about it, but otherwise, yeah.
Well,
Yes.
and it's also interesting that the Denobulan polyamorous relationships have a legal perspective, have a legal side. That
Mhm.
they're in the relationship for 5 years, and afterwards they decide a new contract. Right? It's
Right.
like, I'm going to commit to you for 5 years, and then we'll see. So
It's like a lease. Are you going to renew?
it's like a civic. It's like a civic union, right?
Sure.
As opposed to a marriage, and it's almost it again. The Vulcans seem to be very restricted, very defined as to what they expect, and not very flexible when it comes to their traditions. And I think they're trying to emphasize that in Strange New Worlds
Mhm.
for the benefit of exploring the progression of character for Spock.
So is Cybok actually Angel's husband after Angel stops lying? Why the name Severius?
Well, Angel, by the way, is a nice kind of contrasting to her real character as portrayed in this episode. But Severius, severe, there's a linguistic kind of connection.
Mhm.
I think linguistically it's completely different, though. It's like spelled with an X rather than S and XA. So
Right.
I thought it reminded me of Professor Xavier more than that the X-Men.
Well, here we go, crossover time.
I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I hadn't thought about it.
he does see himself as a god in a sort of similar way, powerful person.
Arrogant.
Right. How does Angel's discussion about the self with Spock speak to not only Spock but the viewing audience?
That
think-
was sorry.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So, as somebody who's sort of figuring out their gender as well, this was an extremely profound bit of dialogue from Angel, talking about putting yourself in a box, maybe make your own box. Maybe think about, not trying to make it like a transracial thing for Spock or anything, just saying, like, you're trying so hard to like fit this thing, and maybe, make your own path, think for yourself. Like, there's endless possibilities of ways you can exist. So
Echoes of Cybok as
Mhm.
well in his language when he was talking to the people that he inducted into the cult of Cybok
Mhm.
during that movie, right? But
Right.
aside from that, I thought that was a beautifully understated moment where
Mhm.
you weren't pounding a drum, you were just being presented with some ideas in a meaningful context within the story, and it resonated within your own, no matter what, whether you're struggling with identity or not, it just
Mhm.
resonates with you, because that's
Right.
what you learn as you get older, that
Mhm.
you're defining yourself not by other people's terms, but by your own. And
Mhm.
it worked for every member of the audience, no
Mhm.
matter what they were struggling with.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Very
really
universal.
liked that. I really, really like that. It's the same kind of treatment that they had of the relationship between Stamets and the Doctor. What was his name? What's his name in Discovery?
Culber?
Doctor who? Colbert.
Dr.
Yes,
Culber?
yes.
Doctor Who.
That
Doctor.
the way they presented that relationship is just like matter of fact. Here it is. You've got two people that care for each other and they're in a committed relationship. Let's move on. It's the same kind of treatment that Discovery, I think, lost in some ways, but that Strange New World is picking up, and I really appreciate that. I really value it.
I thought it could be analogous to Strange New Worlds as a series as well, because it's like in timing and the chronology, it's so close to the original series, but yeah, it's like trying to be its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as far as the story goes, Brad, you're saying that you got Angel telling Spock this as it's kind of echoing Cybok's ideas. It could have been like a sort of subtle way for her to try to turn Spock towards Cybok's way of thinking.
Yeah, and if you look at it just from a macro perspective, you step back a little bit and think then about the larger implications within the episode, but also societal implications, right? I mean, there were just some things that worked in the moment, but then when you step back and think of it connected to Cybok, you start thinking, yes. And I think that's a real shame. I think that's a real shame in terms of it highlights it in a darker way that loses some of its righteousness, I guess.
Right. No, I agree. Do we have time for one more question, Dan?
Yes.
Okay. So could part of Spock's motivation for stopping his own Kolinar ritual in the motion picture come from Angel's confrontation of his identity? I think that when he stopped, like in the beginning of the motion picture, before Spock boards, he's on Vulcan, he's about to do Kolinar, the final purging of his emotion, and suddenly he stops. And we could say, yes, he did that in order to join the Enterprise and help them with their mission. But also he could have done it after he did Kolinar. He could have just stayed. He didn't have to go back. I think, maybe Angel planted a seed that led him to going on that journey until then we have Spock in 6 saying, logic is the beginning of wisdom. So he's embracing his humanity finally. But I think Angel planted a seed there that led him to making that choice.
In that scene from the motion picture, I think he senses the presence of V'ger that drives him back to join rejoining the Enterprise and all the rest of that. Because he's like, well, this is the current threat to the
right. And V'ger is very connected emotionally with Spock too.
Yeah.
So I because V'ger just wants to know who they are, and so does he. So I just thought there was like a connection there. Maybe there isn't. I don't know.
Well, wouldn't it be tantamount to, I mean, carrying on with that process would be tantamount to kind of boxing who you were for that entire period of your life and rejecting it. And if he's going to serve on the Enterprise and have that relationship with his crewmen, the other crew, including Kirk, his friend, right? They will need who they know him to be rather than this more locked down clinical character, right? So maybe he was making a sacrifice there, not just for himself, which would have been perfectly fine, but also for the people that he cared for.
Absolutely. So that being said, how many pips would you give this episode? Aside from the nefarious queer coding villain thing, I really enjoyed this. Right. Aside from that, I would say that this is an extremely entertaining episode. I loved how fun it was. The Cybok thing is so goofy and wacky and off the wall. I would give it 4.
Sorry, and the scale is 20?
The scale is
10? 5. Okay, 5. Got it.
I was going to give it the exact same score. 4.
Scott, you want to go or?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely love this episode. I cannot wait to see Captain Angel again. Absolutely want to know where things are going with Cybok. both the plots, on the Enterprise and on the Serene Squall, I thought worked really well. Again, wasn't that happy to see that Hemmer wasn't there again. Apparently, I'm a huge Hemmer stan. But yeah, overall, I'd give it 4 pips.
You're a huge Hemmer stan or a huge Hemmer fan?
Both.
Either one, whatever.
Okay. I'm going to give it a 3. Has nothing to do with. I mean, I honestly, I didn't pay any attention to the what you said, Vanessa, about the queer coding. I just took it at face value of what these characters were doing and who they were. And honestly, if the character's non-binary and they're bad, well, so be it.
Mhm.
Because I know that there are non-binary that are good, and it's just a story and it's narrative, and but it wasn't so much that characters like Hemmer weren't there, or Kirk, George Kirk wasn't there, or Uhura wasn't there.
Right.
It was just the silliness of some of those freaking scenes. Completely entertaining. Yeah, I get it, but come on.
Yeah.
Come on. They've got phasers, and the people they're shooting at are in the turbo lift, for Christ's sake. You
Yeah,
can't
they're
pick
on
them
the
off.
flagship. They should be able to shoot people.
There's just so many
Yeah, right.
stupid things that while entertaining were just goofy. And I can't abide by goofy. But it just seems to be random.
To be fair, there's probably, you could probably say there's quite a lot of goofiness in the original series.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
Not to say that you're wrong, Brad, but about your opinion at all.
I have my feelings and they're valid, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah, they are. Everyone says. But I thought it was interesting also, like after watching this episode, I noticed like someone in the comment section saying that they came to the opinion that Strange New Worlds is basically the theme of it is about Spock, rather than, because they were thinking, oh, it's a show about Pike before this episode, and then they watched this episode and realized so much is about Spock.
And to Pring, which is surprising.
Yeah.
Well, that's season 1. Let's get to season 4, and then we'll see what we say.
Right.
So, Scott, did you have something to?
Yeah, this is a really minor detail, but I'm hoping that like the Serene Squall can become like the code word that replaces Alpha Braga 4. Like if they find themselves in a situation like this again, and Una's like, Chris, what are we gonna do? And I hope Chris is like, let's do the Serene Squall. I just think it sounds better.
And they say that, and everyone on the podcast will hear me groan wherever you are in the world. You just hear me go, "Oh my god!" I just hear that echoing.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Again, calling back to the Star Trek by the Fun Frontier.
Yeah.
What does God need with a starship?
I'm the guy behind the galactic barrier going, "Stop doing that!"
So thanks to the panelists for joining this discussion. It was great talking to you, everybody. We hope you, our viewers, have enjoyed it as well. Let us know in the comments section what you thought about this episode of Strange New Worlds. Please remember to like and subscribe to the video, and we'll see you next time. Trek you later.